Hi, I'm Stacey Agatha reporting on Groundhog Day 2026, a weather tradition that once again captured global attention early Monday in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Today, Punxsutawney Phil, the most iconic weather-predicting groundhog in the United States, emerged from his burrow at Gobbler's Knob before dawn and saw his shadow. A symbolic signal has appeared, according to folklore, indicating that 6 more weeks of winter lie ahead.
Punxsutawney Phil's 2026 prediction sets the tone for winter's final stretch. On February 2nd, 2026, tens of thousands of spectators gathered before dawn at Gobbler's Knob in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, as the legendary groundhog known as Punxsutawney Phil emerged for his annual weather forecast. After seeing his shadow, according to folklore, Phil's handlers announced a prediction of 6 more weeks of winter, a proclamation that resonated amid an already prolonged and severe cold season in parts of the United States and sparked spirited public reaction. Groundhog Day is more than a light-hearted winter ritual. It is a tradition rooted in centuries-old European weather law, later reshaped by immigration, local customs, and popular culture in the United States. Its origins trace back to Candlemas Day, an ancient Christian observance held on February 2nd, which was believed to mark a turning point in the winter season. Folklore from parts of Germany and the British Isles held that clear weather on Candlemas signalled a longer winter, while cloudy conditions suggested an early spring. These beliefs emerged long before modern meteorology, when communities relied on natural signs to anticipate seasonal change. When German immigrants settled in Pennsylvania during the 18th and 19th centuries, they carried this tradition with them. Animals such as hedgehogs or badgers were used as symbolic weather predictors. In the American context, settlers adapted the ritual to a local species that was abundant and familiar, the groundhog, also known as the woodchuck. Over time, this adaptation evolved into a distinctly American ceremony, blending folklore with community celebration. The first documented Groundhog Day observance in the United States dates back to 1887 in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, where a local newspaper officially declared the groundhog the region's weather oracle. From this modest beginning, Punxsutawney Phil emerged as the most famous figure associated with the tradition, supported by the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club, whose members maintain elaborate rituals and language to preserve the ceremony's mystique. According to club law, Phil is said to be over a century old, sustained by a secret elixir of life, a claim that underscores the playful mythology surrounding the event. Culturally, Groundhog Day occupies a unique space between superstition and entertainment. While few people view the prediction as scientifically reliable, the tradition endures because it offers continuity, humour and communal experience during the bleakest part of winter. Each year, crowds gather in the early hours of February 2nd, braving cold temperatures not only for the forecast but for the shared ritual itself. Television broadcasts, costumed handlers, and ceremonial proclamations have transformed the event into a national spectacle. Beyond Punxsutawney, similar celebrations now take place across North America, featuring regional animal forecasters that reflect local identity. These parallel traditions reinforce Groundhog Day's broader cultural role, a moment when communities pause to collectively acknowledge winter's endurance and express hope for seasonal renewal. In modern society, Groundhog Day also functions as a cultural metaphor. Popularised further by film and media, it symbolises repetition, anticipation, and the human desire to predict the future. In an era dominated by satellite data and climate modelling, the tradition persists. Not because of accuracy, but because it connects people to history, folklore, and a shared sense of seasonal rhythm. At the heart of Groundhog Day lies a simple but carefully preserved ritual, whose meaning is largely symbolic rather than scientific. According to tradition, if the groundhog emerges from its burrow on the morning of February 2nd and sees its shadow, clear skies are assumed, signalling 6 more weeks of winter. If no shadow is seen, the forecast calls for an early spring. This binary outcome has remained unchanged for generations, reinforcing the ceremony's consistency and recognisability. In Punxsutawney, the ritual is conducted by members of the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club, dressed in formal black coats and top hats to emphasise tradition and authority. One designated handler lifts Punxsutawney Phil from his burrow at Gobbler's Knob, while another delivers the official proclamation, said to be translated from Groundhogese. This theatrical presentation is central to the event's appeal, blending pageantry with folklore. Symbolically, the shadow represents humanity's long-standing attempt to read meaning into natural signs. Long before scientific forecasting tools existed, communities relied on observable patterns, light, temperature, animal behaviour, to anticipate seasonal change. Today, the ritual persists not as a meteorological method, but as a cultural expression of hope, patience, and continuity at winter's midpoint. While Punxsutawney Phil remains the most recognisable figure of Groundhog Day, he is far from the only animal forecaster participating in the annual tradition. Across North America, dozens of regions host their own Groundhog Day ceremonies, each featuring a local groundhog or alternative animal, offering a seasonal prediction shaped by regional identity and tradition. In 2026, forecasts varied widely. In Staten Island, New York, Staten Island Chuck reportedly did not see his shadow, predicting an early spring for the northeast. Wirt and Willie in Ontario, Canada, echoed a similar outlook, while other groundhogs across the Midwest and Appalachian regions foresaw extended winter conditions. These conflicting predictions highlight the localized nature of the celebrations and reinforce that the events function more as cultural observances than unified forecasting systems. Some regions have even expanded beyond groundhogs, using animals such as bears, turtles, or prairie dogs, further emphasizing the symbolic rather than scientific foundation of the practice. Each event reflects local climate anxieties, humour, and tradition, often drawing community crowds and media attention regardless of the forecast outcome. Collectively, these parallel predictions illustrate Groundhog Day's evolution into a continent-wide cultural moment, one that celebrates regional diversity, seasonal anticipation, and shared winter resilience, rather than meteorological precision. From a scientific perspective, groundhog predictions have no predictive power when compared to modern meteorology, and their historical accuracy is low. Records maintained by independent weather analysts consistently show that Punxsutawney Phil's forecasts align with actual seasonal outcomes only about 35 to 40% of the time, a rate significantly below random chance. Other famous groundhogs, such as Staten Island Chuck, have claimed higher success rates, but these figures often depend on selective definitions of what qualifies as an early spring or extended winter. Meteorologists emphasise that the concept of a fixed winter endpoint, such as 6 more weeks, is itself scientifically flawed. Seasonal transitions occur gradually and vary widely by region, influenced by atmospheric circulation, ocean temperatures, and solar radiation. As a result, no single date or observation can reliably mark the onset of spring across large geographic areas. Weather forecasting today relies on satellite imagery, climate models, historical data, and real-time atmospheric measurements, allowing scientists to project temperature and precipitation trends weeks or even months in advance. In contrast, groundhog forecasts are symbolic rituals rather than analytical tools. Despite their inaccuracy, experts acknowledge that Groundhog Day remains valuable as cultural entertainment. It sparks public interest in weather discussions, even while highlighting the clear distinction between folklore and science. Beyond folklore, winter and spring transitions in 2026 are being shaped by identifiable large-scale climate patterns that scientists monitor closely. Long-range forecasts point to a season influenced by persistent atmospheric variability, particularly shifts in the jet stream that have allowed cold Arctic air to dip farther south than average at intervals, while also producing brief warm spells. This uneven pattern has contributed to the public perception of a long winter, even as average temperatures trend above historical norms in some regions. Climate scientists note that seasonal outlooks do not predict day-to-day weather, but rather broader tendencies. For late winter into early spring 2026, models suggest a gradual moderation of temperatures across much of North America, though with continued volatility. This means cold snaps may still occur, even as the overall seasonal trajectory moves toward warmer conditions. Importantly, these forecasts exist within the context of long-term climate change. Warmer baseline temperatures are altering how winters behave, often making them shorter on average but more erratic. Snowfall events may become less frequent overall, yet heavier when they do occur. In this framework, scientific projections offer nuance rather than certainty. Unlike symbolic predictions, climate models emphasize probability, regional differences, and evolving conditions, providing a more realistic picture of what the remainder of winter and the arrival of spring may bring in 2026. As Earth tilts toward the sun, Increasing daylight gradually warms the surface, while patterns such as the jet stream, Arctic oscillation, and El Niño southern oscillation influence how cold or warm air is distributed. Ocean temperatures play a critical role by storing and releasing heat over time. Because these forces interact continuously and vary by region, winter does not end abruptly. Instead, spring emerges unevenly, marked by alternating cold and warm periods until stable seasonal conditions are established. As the climate warms, the seasonal patterns Groundhog Day symbolically references are becoming less predictable. Climate change is altering winter length, snowfall distribution, and temperature extremes, making traditional markers of seasonal change increasingly unreliable. Warmer average temperatures may shorten winters overall, yet intensify weather volatility, creating sharper cold snaps alongside unseasonal warmth. In this context, Groundhog Day serves less as a forecast and more as a cultural reminder of humanity's historic relationship with nature. Its continued relevance lies not in accuracy, but in highlighting how deeply climate shifts are reshaping long-standing expectations of the seasons. Groundhog Day 2026 once again illustrates the contrast between folklore and science. While the tradition offers humour, continuity, and cultural connection, modern meteorology provides the tools needed to understand real seasonal change. Together, they reflect humanity's evolving relationship with weather, one rooted in history, yet guided by data. As climate patterns grow more complex, symbolic rituals like Groundhog Day remain meaningful not as predictors, but as shared moments of reflection. They remind us that while science explains what lies ahead, tradition helps us endure the present and anticipate the promise of spring.
That's our report on Groundhog Day 2026, where tradition meets science and folklore meets a changing climate. But as to you, tell us, do you believe in science or traditional rituals? I'm Stacey Agatha. Thank you for watching.